My wife cheated on me with our business partner, and now she's claiming half of our $750, $0 estate in divorce court, even though she secretly sabotaged our company to steal it all. I can't believe I trusted her after everything. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling that just wouldn't go away. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That was me for months. My wife, Lisa, seemed distant lately, more irritable, snapping at me over small things. At first, I thought maybe she was stressed about work or her family, but then I started noticing the little things. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her sneaking around with her phone hidden behind her back, and that weird look she'd get when she thought I wasn't looking. We've been married for about 8 years now, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. We built a decent life together, our own business, a nice house, enough savings to be comfortable. I was proud of what we'd achieved, and I thought we were a team. But as the months went on, I started catching glimpses of something else, something that didn't sit right. She'd cancel plans last minute, lie about where she was going, and I'd find her deleting messages or hiding her phone when I entered the room. That's when I decided I needed to pay closer attention. One day I came home early from a meeting I'd been running all morning. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe grab us lunch. As I unlocked the door, I heard muffled voices coming from the basement. My heart started pounding. I figured maybe one of our employees was there or she was having a friend over. But as I crept closer, I heard her voice, loud, breathy, and unmistakably not talking to a friend. It was her, and she was in bed with someone. I froze in the doorway. She was on top of a guy I didn't recognize, their clothes half off, and her hand was gripping his hair. While she moaned, my stomach dropped. I didn't want to believe it. My mind raced. How long has this been going on? Who was he? Could I even trust anything anymore? I backed out quietly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't want to make a scene, not then, but that image burned into my brain like a branding iron. I went straight to my office, shut the door, and just sat there staring at the wall. That night I confronted her. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I told her I knew everything. Her face went pale and she started to lie, spinning some bullshit about how it was just a mistake, how she was stressed, how it didn't mean anything. She said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I didn't understand her, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen enough. I told her I wanted the truth, and if she lied again, I'd be done. Her eyes flashed with anger and contempt, calling me jealous, insecure, and saying I was paranoid because I didn't trust her. It was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? After everything we built, she was out there sleeping with our business partner, Mark. That bastard, and what makes it worse, she was claiming she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. Yeah, right. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that scene in my head, trying to understand how she could lie so easily, how she could pretend everything was normal. The next day I started digging. I found out she'd been secretly meeting Mark for weeks. I found texts, emails, even cash transactions she tried to hide. She'd been sabotaging our company, writing fake invoices, deleting critical emails, trying to sink us so she could walk away with half the estate. Our business was worth about $750, $0, and she was claiming half of it in the divorce court, even though she'd been working against us behind the scenes. I couldn't believe I'd trusted her for so long. I thought she was my partner, my confidant. Turns out she was just using me to get her hands on our money. I didn't sleep that night either. I was furious, not just at her but at myself. How did I let this happen? How did I miss all the signs? I realized I'd been blind, believing in her, giving her the benefit of the doubt even when my instincts screamed otherwise. She lied so much, spun stories about how we were just going through a rough patch or how she needed space. Meanwhile, she was out screwing our business partner and plotting to take everything we built. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her, but I also knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, especially when she'd been the one sabotaging us all along. That's where I stand now, ready to fight for what's mine, for my company, for my life. I don't know what's coming next, but I do know this. I'll never trust her again, and I'll make sure she pays for what she's done. After discovering everything, I knew I couldn't just sit around and let her take half of our estate. Our hard work, years of effort, all built on trust I now realized was completely misplaced. I had to act fast, but I also needed a plan that would hit her where it hurt most, her pride, her lies, and her future. That's when I started digging into the financials more thoroughly, poring over every document I could find, trying to piece together exactly how much she'd been screwing us over behind my back. It wasn't just the affair with Mark that infuriated me, although that alone was enough to make me see red. It was the way she'd been secretly working against us, sabotaging our company, and trying to manipulate the divorce process. I found emails where she'd been telling Mark exactly how she planned to drain our accounts, hide assets, and make sure she got her cut. She'd even gone as far as creating fake invoices, forging signatures, and trying to transfer money out of our business accounts without my knowledge. I was stunned. How could she be so cold, so calculating? All those years of trust gone in an instant. I started to realize that her entire attitude had shifted. She'd become bitchy, dismissive, and manipulative. She'd lie to my face about everything, call me paranoid when I brought up her suspicious behavior, and then turn around and gaslight me. She'd say things like, "You're overreacting," or "You're just jealous," whenever I confronted her. But I knew better. I had the evidence, and I was determined to use it. The more I uncovered, the more I saw that her plan was to walk away with a significant chunk of our estate, even though she'd been actively working against us. I found a series of bank transactions where she'd been funneling money into secret accounts, and I knew I had to get a lawyer involved immediately. I also started gathering all the proof I could, screenshots, emails, bank statements, to build a case that would expose her lies and her betrayal. I knew she'd try to spin it, say I was paranoid, say I was making things up, but I had enough evidence to dismantle her story. One evening, I decided to confront her again, this time with all the facts laid out. I sat her down in our living room, my heart pounding. I told her I knew everything, from the affair to the sabotage to the secret accounts. Her face twisted into anger, then denial, then outright contempt. She looked at me and said, "You're overreacting. You don't have proof, and even if you did, it doesn't matter. I love you and I'm not leaving." That was her way of trying to save face, to pretend she was innocent, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game and I was ready to fight back. What hurt the most was how her attitude had changed. She used to be sweet, bitchy, but in a charming way. Now she was just bitter, manipulative, and downright cruel. She kept lying, twisting everything I said, claiming she was the victim. She told me I was paranoid, that I was jealous of her relationship with Mark, and that I was ruining our marriage over nothing. But I knew better. I'd seen what she was capable of, and I knew she'd do anything to get her hands on our money and destroy me in the process. I also started to realize how much her betrayal had affected me emotionally. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train, angry, humiliated, and betrayed. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd turned around and stabbed me in the back. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and kept replaying everything in my head. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the fact that she'd been actively working against me, against our business, against everything we'd built. That realization made me sick, but it also fueled my determination to fight for what's rightfully mine. In the days that followed, I hired a lawyer, started to prepare for divorce, and looked into how I could protect our assets. I knew she'd try to claim she was entitled to half, but I also knew she'd been secretly trying to sabotage us. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to be smarter, more strategic. I even considered turning her own game against her, exposing her lies publicly if I had to, showing everyone how she'd betrayed me and the company. All I can say is, I never thought I'd be in this position. I was naive, trusting, maybe even a little too forgiving. But now I see that some people are just selfish, manipulative, and willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want. and I was the fool who believed in her. The sting of betrayal cuts deep, but I'm not going to let her walk away scot-free. I'll fight for what's mine, and I'll make damn sure she regrets ever crossing me. After I gathered enough evidence, I knew I had to act quickly. My mind was racing with plans, how to protect what was left, how to stop her from draining our accounts further, and how to make sure she couldn't just walk away with half of everything we'd built together. I hired a lawyer I trusted, someone who specialized in business and divorce law, and I started the process of officially filing for divorce. But I didn't just want a clean break. I wanted justice. I wanted her to pay for the betrayal, for the sabotage, for lying to my face every step of the way. The first thing I did was dig into our company's finances. I found more than I expected: hidden accounts, fake invoices, and transfers that she'd tried to conceal. I also learned that she'd been secretly meeting with Mark at some shady little coffee shops, talking about how to divide up the company's assets, how she could get her hands on as much as possible before I caught on. It was all so calculated, so cold. She was planning her escape, and I was just starting to realize how deep her deception went. I decided to set a trap. I knew she'd try to hide her tracks further, so I started monitoring her bank accounts and emails. I also installed a discreet recording device in the house. Nothing illegal, just enough to catch her in the act if she slipped up. I wanted her to know I was onto her, but I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want her to suspect I was watching her, or she might get even more aggressive. One afternoon, I caught her red-handed. I was going through our email logs when I saw a message from Mark, an explicit message discussing how they'd take care of me once she had her hands on the money. My blood ran cold. She was planning to dump me, take everything, and then leave me high and dry. That was the final straw. I printed out everything, saved it securely, and prepared to use it as evidence in court. I was furious. How could she be so manipulative, so ruthless? At the same time, I started confronting her directly. I told her I knew about her affair, her sabotage, and her plans to screw me over. Her reaction was a mix of anger, denial, and outright contempt. She accused me of being paranoid, of spying on her, of not trusting her. She called me obsessive, crazy even, but I didn't care. I had everything I needed now, and I was ready to fight fire with fire. She tried to spin it all, say I was just jealous, that I was insecure. She told me she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. I just looked at her and said, "You lied to my face for months. You slept with our partner, sabotaged our company, and now you expect me to believe your lies." Her eyes flashed with rage, and she spat back that I was being unreasonable, that I was ruining her life. But I knew better. I'd seen what she was capable of, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The worst part was how her attitude had shifted. She used to be bitchy but charming, manipulative but somewhat likable. Now she was just bitter and cold, pushing me away, trying to make me doubt myself. I realized she'd become a master at gaslighting, making me question my own sanity. But I refused to be manipulated anymore. I had the evidence. I had the law on my side, and I was determined to come out of this stronger. In the days that followed, I worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming court case. I gathered every piece of proof, documented every lie she told, and made sure I had witnesses ready to testify. I knew she'd try to spin her narrative, paint herself as the victim, but I was ready. I also started talking to some of our business contacts, warning them about her intentions. I didn't want her to be able to spin her lies to everyone, especially not to our employees or clients. I wanted the truth to come out. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of anger and sadness. I'd loved her once, believed in us, believed in her. Now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying everything we'd built. The betrayal cut deep, but I was learning to accept it. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I had to move forward and protect what was mine. I still remember the moment I realized how much this all had changed me. I was sitting alone in my office, looking over the evidence, and I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been naive, trusting her blindly, but now I saw the world more clearly. People are capable of incredible betrayals, and you can't always see it coming. But you can learn, you can adapt, and you can fight back. That's what I was doing now, fighting back, standing my ground and making sure she paid for what she'd done. The court date was set, and I knew I had to be prepared for her next move. She was already spinning her lies to anyone who would listen, trying to paint herself as the victim, claiming I was abusive, controlling, or just plain crazy. She wanted sympathy, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate the situation anymore. I had the evidence, the proof of her affair, her sabotage, and her secret accounts. I knew if I played it right, I could expose her fully and protect what was rightfully mine. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, I worked with my lawyer to craft a strategy. We filed for full disclosure of all assets, including her hidden accounts and any property she was trying to hide. I also subpoenaed her emails and bank records, making sure everything was out in the open. I wanted her to see I wasn't playing around anymore. I also hired a private investigator, someone to keep tabs on her, gather intel, and make sure she didn't slip away with anything else. Meanwhile, she tried to play the victim even more. She would call me, scream at me, cry, beg, then turn around and accuse me of controlling her or cheating on her. It was exhausting. Every time I thought she'd hit rock bottom, she'd come up with a new way to manipulate the situation. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go. She claimed she loved me, that she was just stressed and confused, but I saw through her lies. This wasn't about stress. It was about greed, betrayal, and betrayal of trust on a massive scale. One day, I caught her red-handed trying to transfer more money out of our accounts. I had an alert set up through my lawyer, and I watched her on my phone as she tried to move a significant sum to an offshore account she'd hidden. I snapped pictures, then immediately called my lawyer. That was the final straw. I told her she wasn't going to get away with it. She was going to lose everything if she kept pushing. That night, I changed all the passwords on our accounts, froze her access, and made sure she couldn't do any more damage. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I expected. I was nervous, but I also felt a sense of relief. I'd fought so hard to gather all this evidence to prepare for this moment. When I sat in front of the judge, I laid out everything: the affair, the sabotage, her secret accounts, the fake invoices, the emails. I presented the proof calmly but firmly. I told the court about her manipulations, her lies, her plans to steal our estate. I made it clear I wanted full custody of the business, that I was willing to fight for it, and that she shouldn't be allowed to walk away with what she didn't earn. Her lawyer tried to spin her story, claiming she was just a victim of my controlling behavior, but I shot that down quick. I had the evidence. I had witnesses. I had her own emails. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, examining the documents, and weighing the facts. It was tense, but I knew I had done everything I could to make my case strong. When the judge finally made the ruling, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She was ordered to return all the stolen funds, and the court declared her actions as clear evidence of her betrayal. The judge also awarded me full control of the company, denying her claim to half of the estate. Courtroom was quiet, but inside I felt like I was finally breaking free from the nightmare she'd created. But the aftermath was just beginning. She was furious, of course. She yelled, called me every name in the book, and threatened to fight me in court again. I knew she'd try to appeal, try to drag this out, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I was ready to stand my ground. The financial damage she'd tried to do was thwarted, and I'd protected the company from her sabotage. More than anything, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I'd been betrayed and manipulated, but I'd fought back with everything I had. I realized I'd learned a lot about trust, about the importance of protecting yourself, and about how far some people are willing to go for greed. She thought she could walk over me, but I showed her that I was stronger than her lies. I'd rebuild, I'd recover, and I'd make sure she never did this to anyone again. Now I'm just trying to piece my life back together. The house feels emptier, the business is, but I'm still standing. I don't know what's next, but I do know I won't let her ruin me again. I've learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from those you trust the most, and that if you want justice, you have to fight for it. After the court's decision, I thought things would start to settle down. I was wrong. The aftermath of her betrayal didn't just disappear with the legal wins. It kept echoing through every part of my life. She wasn't done fighting. And honestly, neither was I. The woman I once trusted had become a stranger, someone capable of lying, cheating, and sabotaging everything we'd built. The scars from her actions ran deep, and I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on me every day. She immediately began to lash out, trying to undermine the court's ruling in her own way. She filed an appeal, claiming that I'd manipulated her, that I'd forced her into the affair, and that the evidence was somehow illegitimate. I knew she'd do this. She was that kind of person, always spinning stories, always trying to turn things around to make herself look like the victim. It was exhausting, but I refused to let her win that way. I had my lawyer on standby, prepared to fight her again, to expose her lies all over again. In the meantime, I started focusing on rebuilding the business. The sabotage had left its scars, but I was determined to patch things up. I hired new staff, tightened security, and put new protocols in place to prevent her from ever doing this again. I also worked with a financial advisor to audit every penny, making sure she hadn't hidden anything else. The process was painstaking, but I knew I had to be thorough. I couldn't afford another surprise, especially not from someone I once trusted implicitly. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the emotional fallout. Every day felt like a battle between anger and sadness. I'd catch myself staring at old photos, remembering better times, and then I'd feel the sting of her betrayal all over again. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and angry, but I also knew I had to keep going. I couldn't let her destroy me completely. I started therapy, not just to cope with the pain, but to regain my confidence. I needed to rebuild my sense of self piece by piece. One of the hardest things was watching her try to manipulate the divorce process further. She hired her own lawyer, trying to push for a settlement that was wildly unfair, claiming she deserved more because she was the victim, even though she'd been actively working against me from the start. She accused me of controlling her, of cheating on her, even though I had all the proof she'd been cheating on me first. Her lies were relentless. It was like she was trying to rewrite history, and I had to fight to keep the truth front and center. I also began to realize how much her actions had affected my trust in people. I used to believe in the good in everyone, but now I see how easily some people can betray you for money or greed. It's a hard lesson, but one I won't forget. I started being more cautious, more guarded. I didn't want to be naive anymore. Trust is fragile, and I learned the hard way that some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it destroys others in the process. Despite everything, I refused to let her completely destroy my life. I started spending more time on myself, working out, reconnecting with old friends, and even dating again. It's not easy, especially with the scars still fresh, but I realized I needed to move forward. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her betrayal. I deserved happiness, and I was determined to find it again, even if it meant starting over from scratch. Looking back, I feel a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger at her for everything she did, and relief that I finally stood up for myself and fought back. I've learned that trust once broken is hard to rebuild, but not impossible. That sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. I've also learned that betrayal can come from those closest to you, and the only way to survive it is to be prepared, mentally, emotionally, and financially. Now I'm focusing on my future. The legal battle isn't over yet, but I know I've done everything I can to protect myself and my assets. I've also learned to be more cautious about who I trust, especially in business. I'm still healing. I don't think I'll ever fully forget what she did, but I'm also stronger for having gone through it. And I'll never let anyone betray me like that again. That's a promise I intend to keep. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much I've changed. The betrayal from Lisa didn't just shake my world, it shattered my trust in the idea that people are inherently good. But it also forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding, my own strength, resilience, and capacity to fight through the worst. I lost a lot: my marriage, my sense of security, the illusion that I knew someone completely. But I gained clarity. I learned that sometimes the only way to truly reclaim your life is to face the pain head on and keep moving forward. The legal battles, the financial audits, the emotional, they all taught me that you can't rely on anyone but yourself when it counts. Trust has to be earned, and even then, it's fragile. I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded, but I've also learned not to let fear control me. I refuse to become someone bitter or paranoid. Instead, I choose to be cautious but hopeful. Hope that I can rebuild what's broken, hope that I can find happiness again, and hope that someday I can look back at this nightmare and see it as a lesson, not a life sentence. I've also come to accept that some wounds never fully heal. The betrayal will always be a part of me, shaping how I see the world, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm stronger now because I fought for myself, because I refuse to be a victim. I've learned that revenge, real and lasting, isn't about retaliation or hurting others. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your future. I've done that. I've taken back control, piece by piece, and I'm proud of how far I've come. Looking ahead, I know there will still be tough days. There will be moments when I doubt myself or feel the sting of her betrayal all over again. But I also know I'm better equipped now to handle those moments. I have the strength, the evidence, and the clarity to stand my ground. I have a new outlook, one that's cautious but optimistic. I've learned that life can throw brutal blows, but it's how you get up that counts. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust me when I say you're not alone. Betrayal is one of the hardest things to face, especially when it comes from someone you loved and trusted. But don't let it break you. Use it as a catalyst to grow stronger. Gather your evidence, protect yourself, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Sometimes, the only way to truly win is to stand tall and refuse to be beaten down by lies and deceit. In the end, I've learned that life is unpredictable. People can surprise you, sometimes with kindness, sometimes with betrayal. But your greatest power is your ability to recover, to adapt, and to keep going. I may have lost a lot, but I've also gained a new perspective. A future where I trust myself more, where I value honesty, and where I know I'm capable of overcoming even the darkest betrayals. That's the real victory. And that's what I hold onto now: hope, strength, and the unwavering belief that I can build a better, honest life from the ashes of this chaos.